Hi there. It's there's basically a new quandary, if you want to call it that, coming out of the last video, and that is well, I don't doubt the factuality of this mass extinction. Of course, you know for sure that it happened, but also the causality, which means that it was runaway climate change that caused it. That it was the methane hydrates from the ocean that evaporated into the atmosphere that caused it. Because if you accept that truth, then you have to accept a number of other truths. It is simply well, if you take that extinction as a possible model of what happens now, or actually as an actual model, and we are in, let's say, phase number 1, which is increasing the temperature of the atmosphere, and phase number 2 is that the oceans follow. The average temperature of the oceans is increased, and of course that's a fact. That's a reported fact. Sometimes 5 degrees Celsius, you have El Nino. And then step number 3 is that the methane hydrates also melt and evaporate, and that's also a reported fact. That's also happening. And step number 4, that creates a runaway process, in large enough quantities without any mitigation of the amount of greenhouse gases. Then you have to accept that there is 2 options. One is you arrest it, this process, and the other is all species will go extinct in a matter of 100 years, 200 years, something like that. Pretty fast. So one is you do something about it and life on Earth will persist, and the other is you don't do anything about it and life on Earth will stop. Practically, of course, there were some animals, because otherwise bacteria and stuff like that. What basically happened is that the atmosphere became unbearable to breathe. You can basically breathe it. And large animals choked, or they couldn't live. And you never have a problem if there's not enough oxygen. But that's what was the problem for these animals. And it's already a problem in our oceans, because 5.7 million square kilometers of ocean have become unable to sustain large mammals like dolphins and whales, because there's not enough oxygen in them since the 60s. So this is a progressive process of dying of the oceans. It's a reported fact, together with all the other facts. But to come back to this one, and this really, you have to say it. Somebody has to say it. This means that you are in a situation where you can either stop this process and you'll survive, or you don't stop it and you're gonna die. So if it's about survival, is it important whether everybody survives, or half of them survives, or 1/10 of all the people survive, or one person survives, while you're trying to arrest that process? Because if you don't, everybody dies. And just again, if people don't agree with the factuality of my let's say my base assumptions here, they can go back and look into the science. But I take it pretty seriously. So you have to conclude, you have to realize that letting, one of the options, of course, just like in the biblical story where I believe Moses said to the people that he was leading into the desert, they did something wrong. I believe they built the golden calf or something like that. And he said to them, well, we'll just wait until the current generation is dead, and then we'll start off with the next one. That would be a very benign way. You basically would only have lots of parents that cannot get offspring, children, and that would be, of course, horrible for them. But that happened in China too. Lots of infanticide, but so you might not be able to wait until the current generation expires, as you can call it, and in order to reduce the problem. and you might not be able to wait until this all happens from natural causes, by which I mean depletion of the oil reserves, reduction of crop production, food supply, which we are witnessing. Because that brings about so much chaos that you cannot organize and make sure that things go the way you want it. And I actually wrote a story about this, but or I'm in the process of doing it, but I never knew how to say it or how to explain it in such a way that you don't sound like a complete psycho and a potential mass murderer. But now we got this geological fact. It's a reality, to me at least, and I guess to anybody that's serious about it. And of course you can get 100 geologists in a room and ask them, what's true about this, and apparently according to the publications they agree, or there's no reason to doubt the factuality of that those were the events. Lava eruption, methane release, runaway greenhouse gas, mass extinction. Just taking that fact on board, you're put, I guess, if you want to survive, in front of a number of choices, and one of the choices is how many people are gonna, be allowed to survive. How many people do we basically need to solve this problem? Because those are the only people that we actually need. The only we should then go to that number. That's pretty serious, of course. Serious thought, pretty radical. So you could basically, and the funny thing is that the story that I wrote was basically about an enclave where people preserved the knowledge that we have today, while making sure that the rest of the world did not have that knowledge, did not have electricity, did not have knowledge of periodical system, and that they were kept at a low level of understanding of the world, because it's the tools that they cannot handle that kill everything, that should be kept from them. And of course, we got millions of years behind us of people living full and prosperous and happy lives without electricity, without the periodic table, without air flight, without microprocessors or iPods or iPads and stuff. So it shouldn't be considered a crime to reduce people to that level again, where they only become 40 years and not much older. Why would that be a crime if it happened for 1,000 and 1,000 years before to everybody, and is still happening to a large part of the world actually today? But this mass extinction puts the whole story in a different context, and you could basically now write a different story saying, well, there's this group of people that considers themselves the ones that are going to survive, and they really are not going to care about the other people, because they know it's no use, because they are not going to survive if these other people are around, and these other people are also not going to survive. So here's my radical thoughts for this Sunday, and I'll probably write a story anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me. I think you can be a psycho if you skin people because your mother was a horrible person, like in Hannibal the Cannibal and all that stuff. But are you a psychopath if you decide that there's no food for, like what happened on the slave ships, where the captain had to say, well, there's no food for these slaves. They shouldn't be on the ships, of course. That's the crime. But there's no food for them. They will starve, and because they will fight over the food, everybody will starve. What do we do with them? Anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope this wasn't too shocking.